All right, family. So, welcome into, I think this is our second or third podcast. This is the Bennett Reunion or Bennett Family Podcast. This is relatively new. Actually, it's brand new as of 2025 season as we head into, we're about 2 weeks away from our family reunion. And today is a great day. It's a special day because we're going to get into some specific conversation with family members, specific conversations around individual skill sets and things like that. And today we're actually going to be talking in the medical field. So, as we begin, to prepare to gather to celebrate our family history, it's also right that we pause and talk about more important or as important things as we get together. We don't want to overlook anything. So today, what I'm going to do is invite you into a conversation that matters for every single generation as we move forward. Our family legacy isn't just about the photos that we take or the stories that we tell or the recipes that we're passing down, things like that. Our legacy also lives in our health and how we care for ourselves, the choices that we're making, and how we protect the future for our children, for our grandchildren, and even beyond. So this is a moment right now about combining our legacy with better health. Combining our legacy with better health. It's about giving our family the knowledge, the encouragement, and the resources that we need to live longer and stronger and be better for one another. We're going to hear from a very trusted family medical professional. He's going to talk to us and we're going to understand things that heretofore maybe we didn't understand. And sometimes we overlook simple habits, perhaps some things that can make a big difference, trends to watch out for example, screenings that we can stay on top of, and how to be our own best advocate when it comes to healthcare. How do we do that? But more than that, this is a moment to shift the way that we think, to move from silence to awareness, from fear to empowerment. Whether you're in your 20s or your 70s and beyond, whether you've got a clean bill of health or you've got questions that have been lingering and holding on, this conversation is about you and it's for you. So let's lean in, let's listen with open hearts, and let's take what we learn back home and begin to practice and act upon it and share it with our children, our family, extended and local family, and our communities. This isn't about lecture or pressure. Let me be clear. This isn't about lecture or pressure. It's about wisdom, about understanding and adding to your knowledge base so that you can act again as your own best advocate as it relates to your health. The strongest families aren't just built on blood. They're built on intention. And today our intention is to walk away healthier, wiser, and more connected than ever. So, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Kelly Bennett. My father was Carnell Bennett. My mom is Carol Bennett. My grandparents are Marie and Julius Bennett. And I come from the Preston and the Maddie line. So that's my lineage. I don't know if I'm your cousin or your uncle or whoever, but I welcome you into yet another Bennett Reunion podcast. And I'm also very happy to introduce to you our professional today that we're going to be talking with, my first cousin, Alden Peoples. Welcome, Alden.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And so I'll have you do your lineage real quick so folks can kind of connect themselves to you. I feel doing it this way, people say, okay, all right, I know who he is now based on this and based on that.
Okay, so I am Alden Peoples. I'm the son of John and Dolores Peoples, grandson of Joyce and Marie Bennett from the on the Bennett side. And my credentials, so to speak, I went to the illustrious South Carolina State University and graduated with my degree in biology. Subsequently, went to University of Maryland Medical School. Did my residency in emergency medicine at York, Pennsylvania, York Hospital in York, Pennsylvania. And then after graduating from the residency program in York, Pennsylvania, started working for LifeBridge Health in Baltimore, Maryland, where I am currently. Been practicing emergency medicine since 1996. So this will be going into my 30th year of practicing emergency medicine. And that's where we are.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So lots of experience, obviously. And it's important for a family to realize. So we're going to cap this at about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. So that is to say, we're not going to be able to answer every single medical question that you may have. Now, this is only part one. We can come back as many times as we need to answer specifics. And also, I'm going to provide you with email and different ways to reach out in the event you have specific concerns. Okay. But we're going to start at about 35,000 feet and then, get close to landing. We may get cleared, for landing today. I don't know if we'll get on the ground, but we'll start at 35,000. So Alden, I understand, outside of emergency, one of your specialities is primary care. Am I saying that right?
Well, my specialty is emergency medicine, but part of
Emergency
sort of the overlap is primary care that comes through the emergency department. But my specialty in and of itself is emergency medicine.
is emergency. Okay. So, having said that, what are some of the maybe top three things that you're seeing in terms of health concerns that most families, most individuals are dealing with today? And I know that's like a big question because it could be categorized in age groups. If people are over 50, maybe you're seeing this. If
Yeah.
people are in their 20s, maybe you're seeing that. Maybe we hit one in each kind of category.
Well, I think the top three, because after reviewing the questions, the top three that I thought about that I see most prevalently in the emergency department, and I think are also prevalent in primary care, are hypertension, diabetes, and more recently mental health.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of hypertension, I think a lot of people, it's what we call the silent killer in medicine, because you don't necessarily have any symptoms, and all of a sudden you can have a stroke, you can have a heart attack if you've got undiagnosed and uncontrolled hypertension, because it can affect many different organ systems in the body, and before you know it, you're not having any symptoms, and then it can be life threatening. So that's one of the major ones. And a lot of times I think one of the major things now is not having access to primary care, which is important. So they end up in the emergency department, or not having the financial resources to maintain your blood pressure because of the cost of the medications and things like that when people don't have insurance, and other issues. And in addition, I think people pay more attention to the actual number, because one question I get a lot is, "Well, doc, what's your normal blood pressure?"
Yeah.
And that's individualized because it's based on what your baseline blood pressure is. So let's say you're mid 40s, haven't been to the doctor, and then you say, you know what, I'm going to take control of my health. You go to the doctor, and your blood pressure's 180 over 90. So for the typical number, that would be considered hypertension. But for you, your baseline is 180 over 90. So that's where you start. And then when you start treating that blood pressure, you slowly bring it down into what's considered a normal range. So somebody who's a marathoner or, very athletic, their blood pressure could be 100 over 50, which is normal for them. For the undiagnosed person in their 40s, that's going to be where you're passing out lightheaded and dizzy because
Right.
your body. So it doesn't depend on the number, but on the individual patient, in terms of diabetes. So there's a lot of aspects that go into maintaining your blood pressure, controlling your blood pressure, managing your blood pressure. But that's one of the major categories. The second being diabetes. Obviously, diet, exercise play a major role, and again, the financial issues can't be overlooked because you have to have
Yeah.
the
The resources. Yeah.
to be able to manage these things. And then the third is mental health, with which we know a lot of the resources are being cut these days, to even have access to diagnose if you have any mental issues.
Yeah.
And I have to mention the stigma that goes along with it. I'm really pleased to see more recently how, unfortunately, our society is based on celebrity and social media and stuff like that. And more people are talking about things that they've been through, things that they haven't really disclosed in public, because of the stigma that's associated with it. Mainly in terms of mental health, but more people are coming out and say, anxiety. If you have anxiety, if you have schizophrenia, if you have bipolar, these aren't things that need to be stigmatized. These are
Right.
things openly discussed and properly managed. So I think those are the top three things that I see, at least in the emergency department, that um, are of concern in our community.
We could almost use the whole hour and talk about those things. I've done so. I'm 54. I'm going to give people a kind of sense of where we are in age. So I'm 54, and my diet is completely different now than it was when I was 34 or 24. And my knowledge base is I'm much more empowered in terms of what affects me. It's very interesting to hear your interpretation of blood pressure number because I've done a lot of study on hypertension and they're pretty, they're somewhat solidified on what where it starts. After 129 is 130 and up. To most scientists, they say, hey, this is a hypertension area. This is an area of concern. But to your point, it depends on the individual. I read not long ago, not that I want people to go out and test this. There was a gentleman, he was man, 95 going on 100, and this guy was drinking a fifth of this a day and eating pork. I mean, you have these kind of stories, right? You have this kind of stuff and you think, man, how did he get around this? So I said that to say it does depend on the individual, but I do think there's some generalities. And what I'm getting to and what I want to ask you as a follow-up to that is I know that those categories are significantly higher in African American community as opposed to any other community. I know that. I see these numbers coming out from the CDC every single year, and they are very consistent.
Yeah.
So can you kind of speak to that? Because and I'll tell you what I'm getting to is that I hear a lot, and I don't want to be the food police. We talked about this is not pressure. This is information. But I do hear what I consider to be a very confusing statement from people saying it's genetic. It's genetic. My mom had high blood pressure or my mom was diabetic and these sorts of things. And I'll tell you what I think it is, but I'd like to kind of hear you talk about what you see. You're there. Do you see that the CDC numbers and the studies match what they're saying in terms of it affecting the groups of people that look like us more than other groups?
Well, I think with anything, yes, genetics do play a role. That's definitive. Genetics do play a role. But the example I often use for things like hypertension, diabetes, things that we can sort of affect by our behavior is the person who's been growing up in an alcoholic family, because that can also be genetic, but is never exposed to alcohol. Then you thus don't become an alcoholic. So if you have the genetic predisposition to have diabetes or to have hypertension, but your fruits and vegetables and running and all of these things all of your life, my contention is that it probably will not affect that person the same as it would somebody else in the same family, because behaviors definitely impact your health. And if you're eating, the salt and the like the gentleman that you referenced, how he quote unquote got around it, can't really explain that. But the more negative aspects that you have that affect your underlying predisposition, that puts you at increased risk for developing these syndromes. So I think yes, genetics do play a role, but also environment plays a significant role as well.
Yeah. My response when people say that to me, if they're asking, because listen, okay, so I'm plant-based and I've been for almost a little, I don't know, it's been a decade or so now. So it's been a long time. And so when people find out, they're curious, right? So what I say is, I'm not a doctor, number one, but number two, what I find is that it's not so much. I understand what you're saying about genetics, but I think yeah, I agree with you. It's behavior because you've got to know that what you're putting in your body is affecting your body. It's like if I put a really bad oil or gas in my car, I don't obviously it's going to affect my car. So, in a way of providing knowledge to our family, if you're having, or let me ask the question and not state it, so emphatically,
Sure.
but if you are having um, significant or any issues, if you're having medical problems or something that you've seen, your parents or grandparents deal with.
Mhm.
Um, the solution or part of the solution is perhaps changing a behavior.
Absolutely. Because you can see the effects for yourself in terms of if I'm drinking this or eating that, and you see the progression in your own family of the negative effects it has, then you know, well, these are the small things or the big things that I can change in order to prevent those things from happening. The problem lies in the fact that one, we're not getting diagnosed because we're not doing our primary care, or we're not, adhering to our primary care. And then even when we do, well, maybe I can do little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe I can skip my medicine today. Maybe I, don't need to exercise, as much as I should, because I fall into that category. I know you should be, doing 30 minutes of exercise every day, but life gets in the way and you don't.
Yeah.
But recognize that comes with consequences. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Now, listen, I'm going to be a little tougher on the guys, quite honestly, and I'll tell you why at the end of
yeah,
this.
important for us too. Well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. No.
Well, I'll tell you a story at the end of this that kind of revolutionized the way I thought about family in general. But it's at the core, health, because our fathers have to be there in order to provide the guidance and the knowledge and protection. If we're checking out at 50 and 70, we're not there for that next generation. I have a number of friends who are nurses, and they consistently say that men, particularly black men on a large scale, they just don't go to the doctor. What's
Mm-hmm.
been your experience?
Absolutely. And they're even hesitant about coming into the emergency department. You would be amazed at, you know, I'm thinking of a patient I just saw last week, and but I know for me, if I'm in the middle of my meal or something like that, and all of a sudden I can't feel my arm and I can't speak properly, I'm thinking, okay, I need to go to the hospital. But a lot of times, some of it's fear, some of it is knowing what you think is happening, but denying what you know is happening. And so they don't come in. I had a patient last week who same thing happened. He had left-sided weakness. His speech was garbled. I could barely understand him trying to say his name. And you could see how frustrated it was because it brought him to tears. And that's when I recognized that you're trying to say something and you can't say it, and he would just nod. And that, to me, that would prompt me immediately to come to the hospital. This was 3 days later. Like he had been with this for 3 days thinking, oh, it's going to go away and I'll be fine. And I think on a general scale, that's sort of our gestalt, is that I'm feeling okay. There's nothing going on until you become symptomatic. And then, you're way down the line in terms of hypertension or diabetes or something like that. You're talking about losing toes, losing fingers, losing vision. So some of it's denial. Some of it's just, I can't explain why we do it, but I see it a lot.
Yeah, I think we're both a part of the greatest fraternity in the world, so we see a lot of ego. We
Yeah.
see a
Yeah.
lot of ego, and unfortunately, that's taken us out of here probably as fast as the fried chicken, right?
Yeah.
So when you couple those, men are stubborn and egotistical, and I'm saying this to them directly because I want to encourage you to get beyond that, and even the fear, because it's not going to go away.
Right. Right.
This is not a leaky radiator, right?
Yeah.
This is not going to go away. And I'm going to get on to the next question, but one of the things that I saw, this is years ago, I was sharing with someone about the impact of grandfathers on family.
Hmm.
So when it comes down to the black family in particular, if you continue to go to family gatherings over a year, you'll notice that unfortunately it's female heavy. Men
Yeah.
have checked out. Men have checked out, and it's just unfortunately a truth. So one of the stories that I heard was this guy. I was trying to do this really quick. Is a guy who father moved his family from Egypt into the United States just because he wanted to create a better life. This was done without his father's approval, so they were estranged. And here's the grandson. He's now in his 20s. He wants to know his people, and he makes a trip back to Cairo to see his people. And his grandfather explains to him why it was important for him to know him. And what he said was, the father isn't for the son. The grandfather is for the son. Because speaking from experience, as a father, you don't you don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to make to make things happen. You're learning on the job.
Yeah.
But the person who's perfected this is the grandfather.
That's the experience.
Right. And so without him, we're starting over and over every generation. We keep starting over because the grandfathers are gone. And it's so important that the grandfathers and grandmothers and those who have the knowledge, and now our grandmothers are hanging around, but the grandfathers are getting out of here way too early because there's so many grandsons that don't get that knowledge. Grandfathers have been through so much more than the fathers, and they can share and guide and lead. So I wanted to share that and encourage our brothers, our cousins, our men in the Bennett family to get beyond your ego, get
Hmm.
beyond your fear, go to the doctor. It's important. It's
Yeah.
important that you are here so
Good.
that you can give guidance to the next generation.
I was going to say, because you had alluded to, I guess, later on in the discussion, as far as, primary care. And I cannot express enough how important that is, because you catch something early and you prevent a lot of complications that occur later on. Especially with, and we'll get into screenings later. Colon screen. I have to sort of harp on colon screening because we have a
Mhm.
very heavy GI history on my dad's side, and colonoscopies and prostate exams. They're unpleasant, but
Yeah,
they are. And you catch something early, and it prevents a lot of other things from occurring. But like you said, we have our egos and we have our sort of machinations of what that means. If I'm getting my prostate checked, swallow your ego and get it done.
and do it and do it. And I encourage aunts and folks who have husbands. And there's a way to do it. I'm not suggesting you beat him across the head. Don't do that. But encourage him. Love him into go with him. Go
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah.
It's really that important. It's that important. But let's get into the screenings because
Okay.
that's a big part of knowing, right?
Mhm.
Preventative maintenance. So let's talk about how important it is to have routine screenings, how often you should have them, and maybe some of the more effective screenings that you know of, be it for male or female, that can detect significant issues and catch them early.
Hmm. Well, again, colon screenings with colonoscopies, and per FDA, the age for somebody who's not have the increased risk factors in terms of family history and things like that, the age is getting higher. I think now they're recommending starting at 55. Earlier than that, if you have a GI history in your family, you want to get screened earlier. And I'm specifically talking about colon cancer and colonoscopies. Obviously, you start earlier with prostate exams. That should be on your annual
Mhm.
um, list of exams to do, because you find a prostate nodule and large prostate, and that can be treated pretty readily early, as opposed to metastatic disease, which is not horrible, but it's not something that you want to happen. Um, Also in men, I think one thing is overlooked is checking your testicles for lumps, because testicular cancer does exist and it does kill. Not It's not one of the deadlier cancers. It's treatable, but you can again, catching something early, and you can prevent anything from happening later on. And then in women, obviously, doing your breast exams and mammograms, things like that. Though I think those are the important ones, in terms of screening.
Okay. Okay. For families, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but for families with history, let's say of something chronic, what are some important preventative steps? And you kind of alluded to some, behavioral changes as well. But let's kind of give them maybe a strategy or a plan. What are some important preventative steps that family members can take if they know that you mentioned that there's some history of maybe something chronic on your dad's side. What are
Mhm.
some preventive measures that you and your brother and other folks can take to ensure that they're in better shape?
Well, what we've done, and we do it, I I won't say routinely, but I would say more often than most, is have a family discussion about, have you, you know, have any new diagnosis? And this is, I'm just talking about around, around the dinner table, any new diagnosis, because you need to know what your siblings have been diagnosed with, what your parents have been diagnosed with, because that's part of your genetic history.
Mhm.
And then you can sort of direct, do I need to be screened for this, or do I need to be screened for that? And then you can take that armamentarium to your primary care, which everyone should be doing, because primary and preventative care, to me, they're essentially intertwined. Because you get your hemoglobin A1C, you get your PSA. These are studies, that for looking for diabetes, looking for prostate cancer or prostate enlargement. And like I said, the earlier that they're done, the more the more complications that can be prevented. So I think starting with family discussions as not necessarily in preventive care only, but also advanced directives. Because as we get, that's sort of off the subject, but I need to sort of bring that up too, because oftentimes we get to unfortunate places where we haven't had the discussion. One family member wants this, one family member wants that. That's not the time to be trying to figure out what's the best thing for our loved one. So these sit down family discussions are important, and then you take that to your primary, get screened for the appropriate test or get the appropriate screening test done. I think those are the most important steps to for long-term good health, and obviously diet, exercise, sleep, all those things.
Right, right. Just so the audience knows, what can you explain the difference between urgent care and primary care and emergency care? I think folks know what emergency room is, but
Well,
primary and urgent.
you'd be surprised. So primary care is essentially what we've been discussing is your sort of everyday health concerns that you address with your primary care physicians, your diabetes, your hypertension. These are everyday management strategies and tools that you have with your primary team. Um, and then these things prevent complications happening from later on. Urgent care, on the other hand, are things that aren't necessarily primarily related, but things that are happening immediately that need immediate attention. Not life or limb threatening in terms that, it could take you out, but things that you sprain an ankle, you hurt a hand, you get the flu, COVID, for instance. Well, not back during the pandemic, but things like that where you can go to urgent care, you can get the appropriate antibiotics, you can get the appropriate splinting, you can get the appropriate treatment at that time, and that problem's taken care of. Then you take that back to the primary. Well, I had the flu last week, or I had pneumonia last week, and so your primary is sort of the gatekeeper. So if you see specialists, if you go to urgent care, if you have an immediate problem, they know all these things are happening, so they can incorporate that into your general health. And then emergency medicine is life or limb threatening, having a stroke, having a heart attack, gunshots, stabbings, car accidents, things like that, that could potentially be life threatening for you. Fortunately, people don't have access to the first two, primary care, because they don't have primary physicians, because they don't have insurance, or they don't have access because it takes 10 months to get in to see your primary. And urgent care, they're not, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but most urgent care centers, they're not obligated to see any particular patient. If you don't have a lot of them have cash up front, you can't pay, they're not going to see you. Emergency medicine, we see everybody. So a lot of times what happens is it turns into a convenience room as opposed to emergency room. I work two jobs and I can't get in to see my doc. So, I've had these sniffles for 2 weeks. Is that technically emergency medicine? No, but they have no other resources. So it's overlapping, but in terms of, the definitions, that's generally the categories that they fall in. But
Gotcha.
a lot overlaps in the emergency department.
You brought up something I wanted to talk because the screenings, the primary, all that stuff is great if you have access to it.
Right.
So let's talk about if you don't. What are some alternatives outside of, like you said, the waiting around in the emergency room, which actually I've seen before? Is there a place where folks can go in terms of gathering information online or some, department? I know on the national level is freaking chaos at this point, but
Yeah.
on the state level, is there a place that we could direct people to for additional Q&A to find out if they qualify for certain types of resources?
Well, most states have what's the term they use? An exchange. Usually it's an insurance exchange, but it answers a lot of the questions that people have in terms of what should I be doing, what screening should I be getting, and then they'll direct you, to particular insurance companies, et cetera. But each state, because what's important in Mississippi may not be important in New York. What's important in California may not be important in Idaho. So each state individualizes their own exchanges, or they should, which was the great thing about the Affordable Care Act,
Hmm.
otherwise known as Obamacare, which it became so it was an excellent idea. The idea behind Obamacare was you get all of these young people into the system that don't need the resources. So they're paying their premiums, and then those that utilize more resources as you get older, they use the money from the younger people. Then as the younger people get older, more younger people join so the younger people support the older people in the system, but everybody is insured. Unfortunately, it became politicized and it didn't work out the way it should, but a lot of people are enrolled right now. And I think those exchanges are important. And actually, even today, 2025, people don't know that resource is still out there. You can still get enrolled onto the Affordable Care Act. Now, after this recent voting fiasco, the government is cutting a lot of resources, Medicare, Medicaid, and we're going to see the brunt of it in hospitals. Hospitals going to close. We're going to have less resources to offer patients. So the resource I would say is to go to the exchanges now while you can, because I think it's harder to get you off as opposed to preventing you from getting on. So I think that's an important resource to use.
Okay. Let's talk about this because we do have a significant older pocket of family members, and they may need to obviously go to the doctor more times than us. How do we how do we advocate for them? How do we ensure they're getting what they're paying for in terms of coverage? How do we ensure that they are not being ignored? I have volunteered for years in my community for Meals on Wheels. And one of the common things that I see, because the majority of people I deliver to are elderly and they don't have transportation.
Yeah,
I noticed things over the years. I noticed that everyone has a calendar and this is their whole week is around doctor's
yeah,
appointment.
yeah, yeah.
In the middle of their table are all these medications. Everybody's concerned about getting from this doctor to that and so forth and so on. I notice arthritis, very common. I notice swollen appendages, feet in particular, ankles and things like that. That's neither here nor there. I was going to make a statement about that. But the point is, how do we ensure that we can advocate for them? So when they go to see their doctor, they're getting the right type of treatment and the right type of coverage.
Okay. I think again, it starts with sitting down at the table and having a discussion with mom, dad, brother, sister. Your appointment's next week. What do you want to have happen? What are your concerns? Well, I'm concerned about my swollen ankles. I'm concerned, I have having these palpitations, etc. So cell phone, notepad, writing down what your concerns are. Prior to going in, do a little research on your own. Okay, swollen legs in a 65-year-old female. What does that mean? And obviously, AI is going to generate a lot of different things. But once you're armed with the questions that you have, once you go into the office and they do their exam and get to the point of do you have any questions, then you have this armamentarium of questions to understand. Well, mom's been going through this or dad's been going through that, and they're on this particular medication. What does that do? Not the little green pill that looks like a blah blah blah, but the amlodipine or the hydralazine or the losartan. Know the names of the medicines. Other thing I always recommend to my patients in the emergency department is most people have a cell phone. You have a cell phone. If you can't go with your loved one, FaceTime when they're in the office. Most physicians or providers will answer questions through FaceTime because you can't always be there. And I think people don't utilize that enough because telemedicine is becoming much more popular now. And that's another avenue. If you can't get in to see your primary, see if they have the telemedicine option, which most offices do. It's becoming more accessible, but still difficult. But I think having prepared prior to going in is important. That way you can have all your questions answered and keep a separate, a little note, but keep a separate log. So, back in, August of last year, this wasn't happening. And now you can have something to compare it to. So when you go in, doc, I noticed that The blood pressure back then was 130 over 70, and now she's at 160 over 80. What's going on there? And I think keeping that log allows you to understand sort of how subtle changes can be over time when somebody's not experiencing much more symptoms. But then you get in the office and you can have all these things addressed. The other thing is, a lot of times you see people carrying around bags of
Mm,
pills. Take pictures of your medicines. That way, when you go in the office, you can ask about each separate one and you know which one you're talking about, as opposed to the little green pill, little white pill. And third thing is there's a bunch of apps that are out there. The one that I sort of use is in case of emergency. It's called the ICE app, and you have all of your medical information on there. If God forbid you're in an accident or you fall and hit your head and can't answer questions for paramedics, all they do is tap on that app. It has all of your medical information, doctors, emergency contacts, etc. I think that's very useful.
okay.
Of advocating for you or your loved one, go in with questions prepared that you have in front of you. Because a lot of times we think about things are happening so fast. And I meant to ask about ask about this when I was in there. Or I meant to ask about that. If you have it in front of you, you won't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned a great thing, having that dinner table talk. Me and my brothers and sister don't live where my mom is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember back during the pandemic, my mom actually did contract COVID, unfortunately. So one of the things I'd encourage family members to do, if you're like us, in that you don't live where your father or mother is, and they are, obviously aging, is
Mm-hmm.
to keep constant communication going. I
Mm-hmm.
could tell by just talking to her that something was off.
Wrong. Yeah, yeah.
I could tell something was off. And I just got up one day and I told my wife, I said, I've got to go because I got to figure out now what's actually happening. Now, she wasn't, saying, hey, I have COVID, come home. But what I'm suggesting is we've got to, if we're not at the dinner table and we're not seeing them face to face, we've got to, especially when there's more than one of us, we got to figure out between, the siblings, who's going to go and check on mom, who's going to go and check on dad, because that's incredibly important. And one of the things I'll tell you, I got there, she was super agitated. Obviously, she was fearful because she didn't want to have COVID. She, and but going to the doctor and being there alone is one thing, but going with your son or daughter, I'll tell you, my mom listen, she didn't get well because I came, right? But she felt a lot more secure. She felt a lot, better that someone was there and she didn't have to go through this by
Yeah,
herself. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, I would encourage if you guys can do that. I think you gotta, particularly now, like I said, I'm 54. I'm getting into that age of life where I'm take care of my kids and they should be off and running. But now I've got to be looking forward and say, okay, what can I offer to my parents, to my mom to ensure that she's good to go? And I want to put that into all my cousins' ears to say, listen, if you're around my age or older, then you need to really be paying close attention to what's going on with our parents.
yeah. And listen, we all have this great technology. Well, double-edged sword, but great technology that we hold in our hand. FaceTime, Google. There's a whole bunch of information on there that we have at the tip of our fingers, and we just need to utilize it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Don't get me going on that. So here's what I want to challenge the family to do. We're going to start going through a few questions here because we're going to start wrapping it up in the next 15 minutes. But I want to get into a little lighter areas where I think perhaps you want to document some stuff. Okay. So let's start here, Alden. Let's start with just what's something easy, okay? An easy, adaptable daily practice that a family member can do now that can help them long term. And I'll tell you the reason why I was talking about the swollen feet and the seniors. I would always bring my daughter with me. And even my daughter recognized everybody has all these doctor's appointments and calendars and medicine and this, that, and that. And I said, you don't have to accept that as being a senior. You don't have to, that doesn't have to be your quality of life. Now, you have to change your practices now in order to avoid retaining water and some of these other things. But I wanted to just stress to her that we can have an enjoyable senior or golden age and not have to have what we see some of the seniors dealing with because some of the quality of, well, I'd say it's not a great quality of life, right? That's what I would say. They're very limited. A lot of these folks can't walk. There's constant pain, these doctor's appointments, and they're taking medicines, and the medicines all have side effects that really, and listen, God bless them. We love them. It's not, I'm sure, their intention, right? No one intended to do this.
Yeah.
But now we have information that suggests, if we change this or we change that earlier, perhaps we can avoid this later.
And the unfortunate part about life, I guess, is that when you're young, a lot of these things don't affect you. So we develop bad habits. I know, and I'm speaking about myself. Sugar, sodas, fried foods, things like when I was young, I could eat anything, anytime, all day, every day. Now it's, like we were talking about earlier, the smallest thing, can make you feel sick. So in terms of little things to change on what I've started doing, and because I've done these, fad cleanses, I shouldn't call them fad cleanses because they're effective, but they're not long term, temporary relief, and then you go back to the same old habits. So what I call them are my little tweaks. Like I love to drink soda. So instead of getting sugary sodas, I searched around and I tasted different things and found this flavored sparkling water that gives me that satisfaction of soda, but it's sugar free and it's water because you got to increase your water intake. Instead of taking the elevator when I get to work, take the steps. Instead of finding the closest parking spot to the store, park a little bit further away and get some extra steps. These are small things that subsequently become habit. And
Mm.
then start feeling better, you do more. But because you can't just another mistake I've made is, you know what, I got to get back in the gym, and then you get back in the gym for 2 days and you're Superman, and then you feel awful and you don't go back for another 6 months. That's me. So small changes that you're going to sustain in order to have achievable goals. Because if you set goals that you're not going to achieve, you're setting yourself up for failure. Um, Other things like instead of using oil, I bought an air fryer, so you can still have that sort of like if you like fried chicken or you like fried foods, you can air fry foods. For me, it was substituting French fries with zucchini fries or sweet potato fries, little things like that, where you get more vegetables in your diet, but you're still getting that satisfaction of the things that you like to eat. So that's what I would say. Make little changes that subsequently become big changes as you start, along the path of change.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I know when I changed my diet, I had a lot of people like, how did you just stop? And I said, your why, your why is so
All right,
important.
go ahead.
Because it's really all psychological. You think you're
Yeah,
hungry, and your body is responding to
yeah.
a psychological, your brain is emitting a chemical. And so you got to understand how your body works. It's all psychological. So what is your why? And I encourage people's whys to be to see that baby graduate or to see your daughter get married or to be there for those really, really important days. So you got to create a why. Listen, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. This is just me saying, hey, we want you around as long as possible. So create a why. Create
But
a
that,
why and stick to it.
I've have fallen well had fallen in now changing that pattern of mindless eating. Like you're watching football or you're watching something that interests you on TV, and you're just grazing is what I call it, popcorn or chips or whatever. And you have to be mindful of that because you're not hungry. And I noticed that when I was doing that and I stopped doing it, having a glass of water or some of that sparkling water and your supposed hunger is not there. So just being mindful of these things that are just, are unhealthy, but it's just rote, it's habit.
Just have it.
So,
Yeah.
I think things like that are helpful.
It's habit, and also it can be community because I notice like people tend to drink when they're around people who drink, and people tend to eat certain things when they're around people who do that. So maybe be aware of your triggers and things like that. I know I'm just thinking about it years ago. I didn't even know what intermediate fasting was.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered being plant-based, and now I do both of them. And
Hmm.
most days, all day, I only eat once.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
never really hungry because I figured out where it was coming from. And that's what I want to encourage family members to figure out that this is more psychological than
Yeah.
physical. And if you can meet it there, because everything's habitual. And we got to know what words mean. I don't want to get going, but breakfast, no one's breaking the fast. Like you went to
Right.
bed at 10 o'clock eating, like, where's the fast?
Right. That's exactly what it should be. Because me, by virtue of working nights, I have an 8-10 hour time period where I'm not eating,
Hmm.
and like you said, eating maybe once a day, maybe twice. But I've become more conscious of that because it's healthier, at least for my schedule and what I do, um, as opposed to having 3 meals a day and having all these calories. Is because especially during the day when I'm sleeping, those calories aren't going anywhere. So the breakfast fast for me is exactly that, and just a small meal. Oh, that's the other thing to mention about small changes is portion control and
Mm.
because we go to the reunion and trust me, I love to eat at the reunion. But if I've been staying on my plan, so to speak, up to that point, I can eat at the reunion and then get back to it when I get back home.
Hmm.
So it's not saying you can't enjoy the things that you enjoy, but just understand, like you said, the why. It's just this one weekend, and then I'm going to get back to whatever, and anything in moderation. You don't gorge and have a 2,000 calorie meal, but just enjoy the food that we have and all that kind of stuff, but everything in moderation.
Yeah, I agree.
And have your plate should be greener than brown, more leafy vegetables and fruits as opposed to other stuff.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do part two. We're gonna have to really, because I learned so much. I don't, we never really talked about this, but my wife was in the hospital for a long time when my last daughter was born, and I learned a lot because I had to.
Mhm.
It was very serious. We were in the hospital for a long, long time, and you don't realize we as civilians, let's call it, think that the medical community has an answer for everything. That is not the case. That is not the case. And I began to realize, like, I would go to well, I'm not gonna say it. I just say most
There,
doctors are not trained on nutrition. Let's,
that's what we're not most. I would say all, unless you're a holistic practitioner. We
yeah.
don't have courses in med school. We don't. I mean, about nutrition and the effects it has, but you learn anatomy, biology, pharmacology, physiology, nutrition. You know, where was that course? So because you see a nutritionist, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So guys, beware when you're getting advice from your doctor and he or she is heavier than you, come on, let's be advocates for ourselves.
And for me, I say this to anybody. It's even patients that come into the emergency department. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if
Hmm.
I think the mark of a good physician is to be able to tell you, you know what, I don't know, but I'll try to help you find out.
Mm.
Or I don't know, but I can send you to somebody who might. Because I know emergency medicine, right? That's my lane. You talk about endocrinology and cardiology and all these other ologies, that's not my purview. So if I'm going to tell you, oh, I know all about neurosurgery and what you should blah blah, anybody who what is it? What is the saying? Jack of all trades and master of none. So I know my lane, and that's and even when I give you the information that I'm confident with, still do your own research. Well, doc, you said this, and then when I looked it up, you were right, or no, you weren't quite so right. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
always do research after getting information, especially nowadays, because there's so much TikTok and Instagram and all this kind of stuff that's just bogus. Do your own research.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. We got a lot to talk about on the next time around. So we're going to start shutting it down, but let's talk about myths. Any myths out there that are concerning to you that maybe you think groups of people are falling into? Speaking of TikTok and social media doctors, any myths or trends that
Mm.
people should avoid?
Well, I'm going to speak to the young people these days. The thing that really bothers me when seeing these TikTok things are thrill seeking behaviors, and you don't see the consequences. People die doing these things. Making these concoctions and drinking them and chugging. Don't do those things. Like if somebody's challenging you to do something online, think about what is the consequence. If it's a pouring ice over your head, fine. But if it's endangering your life, they're not going to be there when you're 6, 7, 8 months in the hospital because you've got brain damage from something that a challenge online or walking across a bridge that's 100 feet up just to say you can do it and film you. Don't do that kind of stuff. That's the thing that bothers me. Um, But in terms of medical things, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that I would say, because I'm not really a TikTok person. A few things on Instagram, but none of these. I don't follow the trends and things like that. But if what a particular myth or trend piques your interest,
Mhm.
do your research. Go to reputable sources, not, this TikTok influencer said, go to reputable scientific resources that have studies that support what they're contending this is supposed to do. That's
Study.
what, yeah,
Studies, I love. This is scientific. What we're
yeah,
talking about with you guys today is this is scientific, somewhat, subjective in some ways. But when you're doing your research, make sure there are numbers and studies that go along with this to ensure that what you're doing has been tested and proven, in terms of a certain trend or result. We're
yeah.
going to do about 5 minutes, all in
Okay,
lightning round, if you will, some quick answers to some health questions, and then we're gonna shut it down.
okay.
um, these are extremely difficult, by the way. No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
wow, okay.
Coffee or tea? Coffee or
Tea,
tea?
tea, definitely tea.
Definitely tea. Any
Yeah.
reason?
Oh, I thought you just meant for me. You mean in general?
Yeah.
Um, it depends. Um, People with migraines, people with asthma, coffee can be beneficial because of the vasodilatory effects of caffeine. For me, I like the sort of holistic benefits of green tea
Mm,
and herbal teas.
yeah.
So I think it depends.
Yeah. Yeah. I love teas. My wife is a big tea person. Best stress reliever. What do you do? What's the best stress reliever for you?
Sleep. That's easy for me. Uh, occasional or more than occasional cocktailing. Um, but mainly sleep and uh, I won't say meditation, but solitude. As I've grown older, my peaceful space helps to relieve stress.
Mm,
Uh, so that's what I would say in terms of stress relief.
cool. Cool. So we talked about the health myth already. Favorite superfood?
A new favorite, actually. I would have said kale, but at work, a nurse made for me beet lemonade.
Mm.
And time you mentioned beets around, if that was an automatic no. But learning about all the health benefits and tasting this beet lemon, because I have to get a recipe and there's no sugar. Apparently, it's grapes with beets and lemons, and
Mhm.
it. So I would say beets.
It's funny you bring that up. My wife loves that lemonade.
Yeah, I had it
Lemonade.
a couple of weeks ago for the first time. I was like, "This is beet lemonade," because back as a kid, it was beets, and now as you get older, it changed. So yeah,
Yeah, we started juicing years ago, and beets is one of those things. It's my favorite one of my favorite things to drink because, like you said, there's so many health benefits.
yeah,
Tell you a funny story though. When I first started drinking beet, like this is just beets. This is not blueberry and
yeah,
pineapple. This is only beets. And so one day I went to the restroom and my urine was like really pinkish, and I
yeah,
thought I almost had a heart attack.
uh,
So just beware when you drink beet juice,
yeah,
everything gets that diarrhea. I mean, it gets on your hands, it gets on your,
yeah,
but it's coating your insides too. But it's really good for you.
yeah, yeah.
It's really good for you. Most underrated daily health habit. Most underrated daily health habit.
Most underrated. I would say drinking water. Water is very obviously, 66% of the body is water, which I don't drink enough of. But again, make your little tweaks in your substitute. So I would say drinking water.
You know what, Alden? I'll tell you, I am always surprised at 54. I don't know why I am. I just am. I'm surprised at a few things, and I don't want to be that person. But when I drive past the McDonald's and I see the line around
Yeah,
the building, I
yeah,
almost fall out of my car.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and when I hear that people don't drink water, I'm like
hmm
your body is
yep.
mostly water.
And you can get dehydrated very,
So
very,
quickly,
yeah,
so quickly, so quickly. So water is your friend. Water is your friend, especially now. It's
yeah.
been 90 some odd every day here. So water
105
is,
today. So, well, the heat index 105 here today.
oh man.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much, Alden, for
absolutely.
being with us today. I am sure this is going to be popular and I'm sure I'm going to be inviting you back.
Yeah.
And we're going to open it up to other physicians because we have more physicians in the family. This can be a group kind of situation because the goal is to provide information. The goal is to give you this information for one reason, that's to empower you. We want you to make the best decisions you can as it relates to your health. That can be what you're putting in your mouth or how you're advocating for yourself within the hospital and within the doctor's office, and how to get resources if you don't. We want to be a resource for you. So I'm going to list in the description ways to contact me and ways and I can reach out to. I don't want everybody to begin to call you and stuff like that, but we'll have an email address. And if there's anything that we didn't cover here, feel free to send it to me and I'll forward it on to Alden. And I assure you, the next time that we have a roundtable like this, we'll bring it up. If it's something more immediate, please let me know that, and then I can communicate with Alden and sort of act as liaison, and we can figure some things out. Alden, is there any last or any final things you'd like to say to the family?
Primary care, primary care, primary care. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
There you go. There you go. There you go. And drink water. Drink
And
water. Drink water. Okay. So guys, thank you for listening. And listen, most importantly, take care of yourself.
yeah,
Second to that, if you know that there's a family member who's not engaged with the Bennett family reunion or committee, please make sure you connect us. And one of the reasons why we're doing a podcast is to connect with people who we've lost connection with. And so while this subject matter may not be, the primary for you, we're going to be doing different types of subject matter in the future, but just share it. Share it with a family member, a loved one that you haven't seen or heard from in a while, or maybe that lives down the street and just not engaged with the family. Our goal is engagement. Our goal is reclamation. Okay. So if you can do that for us, I would appreciate it. And again, don't forget, right in the comments in the description, I'll have an email address and a way to reach out to me and to reach out to the Bennett Family Committee. So any questions you have, please feel free to ask. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you soon.
thanks for having me.